Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again, and oh boy, everyone kind of expected this one to be coming for a long while. In 2018, Power Rangers celebrated its 25th anniversary. The show's own 25th anniversary episode was fine, nothing that spectacular, and arguably a pale ripoff of some concepts from this story. But as I said back in the Justice League and Power Rangers crossover review, Boom Studios was enjoying a lot of success with their Power Rangers comic. It took the basic premise of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, had all the same overarching plot points happen, but modernized the setting and dialogue. The Rangers are no longer overachieving goody-goods, but realistic teenagers put in a stressful, life-threatening situation, but ultimately have strong moral compasses and the will to fight evil. A lot of the story focuses around Tommy, which is kind of reflective of how the show was anyway, but every Ranger gets a chance at development, and their relationships with one another build on their established personalities to grow more nuanced. And the book is great. While I've read Shattered Grid before, I wasn't actively following the books as they were coming out, despite me being sent them as part of the Power Force fan thing Saban was running at the time, which basically consisted of me getting like a few pieces of merch and the Boom Studios book. Not even exclusive or rare merch. I think I got like a few toys meant for very little kids. I mean, normally the toys are for kids anyway, but I mean like 3 to 6 years old stuff, and not like even an action figure or a morpher. Anyway, point is, I knew some of what was going on thanks to word of mouth and my own brother, who is a much more prolific toy collector than I am. I mean, I collect some toys. I use magic to turn them into things I can shoot demons or robots with. My life is strange. And there was one exclusive toy in particular that he got his hands on when we went to Power Morphicon in 2018. Lord Drakkon. He's the villain of our review today, so I need to give some context for what's going on. As such, in preparation for this, I finally went back and read all the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issues leading up to this storyline. Time for backstory! In an alternate universe, when the Rangers destroyed the Sword of Darkness and freed Tommy from Rita's mind control, he didn't turn good. Instead, while the mind control was present, Rita had already been persuading Tommy to join her side, that the world sucks and you need to blow everything up and start over. And thus he and Rita started conquering Earth, destroying cities, or forcing them to surrender and normalizing her tyranny to the point where people actually welcomed her and Tommy. The Rangers, in a last-ditch effort to stop them, summoned several Ranger teams, Zords, and attempted to turn Jason into the White Ranger to stop him. Unfortunately, they were too late. Rita's forces overwhelmed the command center, killed some of the Rangers, and Tommy stole the White Ranger powers before they could be infused with Jason, merging them with his Green Ranger powers and became Lord Drakkon. Also, part of his conquest force included the Pumpkin Wrapper monster, and that's kind of amazing. Drakkon is defeated and accidentally sent back to the Rangers universe, where he's captured by a woman named Grace Sterling and her organization Promethea. Grace, it's revealed, is actually a former one-time Power Ranger herself. Her team was assembled in 1969 to prevent Rita's escape during the original moon landing, but it was a disaster. 3 of her Rangers were killed in the battle, and Zordon realized the mistake he made in sending an unprepared team of strangers on a mission together. Since the threat was over, he took the powers from the 2 survivors and let them go on their way. Grace using the time since then to try to improve the world by creating Promethea. Her heart's in the right place, but she clearly has problems with due process or letting individual rights get in the way of what she thinks is correct, keeping secrets, etc., etc. In the final pages of issue 24, Drakkon is able to escape from Promethea, leading us into the big story. So let's dig into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a Shattered Grid, and see if it lives up to the hype.
Atop the fourth wall, when bad comics burn, Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn.
Before we begin, I should note that this review is going to be a bit abridged in spots. See, Shattered Grid is technically 15 parts going by the checklist, but this is inaccurate. Putting aside that no issue is actually labeled Part 1, Part 2, etc., some of the comics are more like tie-in issues rather than majorly advancing the plot. Now, there are important parts in these, but also quite a lot of stuff not really important to what's going on for Shattered Grid. Quite frankly, even if I did feel like every issue deserved to have a full recap here, well, I think this would create too long a review. When I did Maximum Carnage, which was 14 parts, I was willing to do that because I'd read Maximum Carnage several times. And it still ended up being over an hour long. Super long episodes like that are the big reason why the schedule slippages happen. I'm doing multiple episodes worth of work on a single one, and thus it takes that much longer to write and edit it. And I've only read Shattered Grid once before doing this review, so I'm less familiar with it. So I'm sorry, but some parts are just going to be quick summaries of the issue, mostly touching on the bits that matter to the plot. I'm sorry if you were hoping this would be super comprehensive of every single thing that happens, but like, the free comic book day issue is part of this, and most of that is a recap of the plot of Season 1 of Power Rangers. And if you want that, you may have heard of this other series of videos I do. While there are 2 prelude issues that lead into the story, it's really just stuff for the ending pages of each issue. The first where Drakkon escapes, and then the other where his most loyal servant, Ranger Slayer, prepares to go to try to retrieve him. And we're still looking at several comics today, so we're skipping the covers for brevity as well. We truly begin with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 25, and given that title, you might be surprised to learn that we open not with these Rangers, but the Time Force Rangers, Season 9 of the show. Out in space, the Time Force Rangers are examining a massive crack in the universe. I always love the visual of space cracking like glass, but extra points here to the artist, Danielle Di Nicolo, for shaping it like a thinner, inverted Power Rangers lightning bolt. I knew it was bad, but look at these readings. The fracture is actually splitting time and space apart.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
The crack isn't only affecting them, but other dimensions of Ranger teams too. Though why there's another Mighty Morphin team in there is anyone's guess. Maybe those ones are like the Marvel Comics Power Rangers? The Time Force Rangers try to use their Megazord to stabilize it, but when they get close, 3 of the team are thrown clear of the Megazord. Somehow, and are erased in the crack as if it was the antimatter wave from Crisis on Infinite Earths. The Pink Ranger, Jen, can detect that whatever is causing this is coming from the past and wants to use a time travel device to go back and correct this. Wes says he'll still try to use the Megazord to close the fracture and buy her time, even though he'll probably die. She teleports out and the Time Force Megazord is destroyed, leading to this terrifying image of a giant Lord Drakkon reaching out of the fracture to grab her. However, she's able to activate the device and go back through time. Excuse me, but in Time Force, they needed large ships to travel through time, not personal time travel devices. 0 out of 10, I can't believe they made a continuity error in Power Rangers of all things. We cut over to Promethea, where Grace Sterling is showing Tommy and Jason the footage of Drakkon escaping, having done so partially thanks to the alternate universe Saba. It's a long story, again, part of the build-up to all this. What do you think? I think seeing an older version of myself like this from different angles shows that my hair looks way better long, frankly. Jason is already mad about Grace having hidden that they had Drakkon prisoner from them, so he's not inclined to work with her on locating him. She accepts that, but does inform them that before he left, he also retrieved his damaged Morpher and Power Coin. Drakkon has gone to see Ninjor, the original creator of the Power Coins, as seen in Season 3 of Mighty Morphin, and is fighting some kind of energy spirit as a test. And yeah, expect a lot of that kind of exposition from me. I don't know how much of my audience for Atop the Fourth Wall has actually seen Power Rangers beyond the original team, if at all, and we're gonna see a lot of stuff from over the years pop up in this story. The important thing to know is that my impression of Ninjor here is spot on to how he talked. Impressive! No one has ever completed the trial so quickly! Speedrunner strats, Ninjor. Drakkon has told him that he's from the future, which is partially true. The universe he was from was farther along in the timeline than the Mighty Morphin one, and that he's here to prepare things for that future, but that he needs him to repair his powers. At the command center, the team speculates about what Saba was doing there. Zordon calls it. He had been planning on assassinating Drakkon. And what's more, what to do now that he's escaped. He'll obviously want his power back, but they're not sure if he was able to return to his universe or if he's still hanging around. This is before the team ever met Ninjor, so he isn't mentioned at all. As they all break to start preparing for a possible attack, Kimberly stays behind to check on Tommy, what with Drakkon being an alternate him and all. Honestly though, the whole thing feels a bit disconnected. Like, he's a version of me, sure, but he's not me. And I know for a fact he's not anything I could ever become either. I've got something he never had. You guys. So as long as you guys don't go to a peace conference or a global gymnastics competition or start dating an alien fish woman, I should be good. She also asks him out on a date since the two clearly like each other. She's just been dealing with a lot of personal life stuff. Back over to Ninjor and Drakkon, the former works on repairing the coin. These powers have been forced together, as if by blunt force. I would have expected better craftsmanship by my future self. You may have taken a few blows to the head. Your first idea for fusing them was taking a hammer to the two power coins and yelling at them to fit together. Drakkon inquires about some of the books in his library, mentioning how there were rumors of masters who controlled the morphing grid, where Power Rangers get their powers from. Ninjor confirms they exist, but that some knowledge is not for most people to learn about. He finishes the repairs and Drakkon morphs. Surprisingly, his morphing call is Black Dragon. Now, the Black Dragon was also a thing in the lead up to this, and you could argue it's called that as a corruption of his green dragon powers, but look at this outfit and its lack of black on it. And especially since its two powers fused together, shouldn't it be Tiger Dragon or something? Ninjor offers him a space to rest, but of course Drakkon decides this moment, right when he learns he needs rest after feeling a bit weak, to reveal he's evil. He then manages to break into the command center. Not to fight, but rather to steal the energy crystal that allowed him to cross over into their universe. It's powered by green chaos energy, so energy from Tommy's powers in particular. Speaking of, Tommy and Kimberly finish up their date and start walking off. Tommy leans in for a kiss, but she asks him to take it slow for the time being. After they split up, she regrets her decision. I should have kissed him. I wanted to kiss him. We're the only part of this franchise that actually allowed open mouth kissing. I should have taken advantage of that. She turns around to try to catch up to him, but Tommy soon finds himself on the business end of Saba. The energy crystal is fully charged now. Luckily, Kimberly shows up and morphs, but before the two can clash, Jen teleports in out of nowhere and opens fire on Drakkon. He flees through a portal back to his home universe, Jen collapsing from exhaustion. Unfortunately, it's too late for Tommy, who dies as the issue ends. So that's what she meant. So that's what that fortune teller meant when she said I'd die by stabbing myself in the back. Oh man, I wish I hadn't asked for my $5 back. Suddenly I'm the asshole. We continue in issue 26. Drakkon's forces have been waiting for him and been planning for his return, but he's more concerned with seeing his only friend and confidant, Finster 5, some sort of weird hybrid of Rita's chief monster maker and the Ranger's robot buddy. I don't know if there was a tie-in or something that explained how the hell that happened before this, but the point is that Drakkon has hopes of expanding his empire beyond their own world. Finster thinks that there are things preventing them from doing so. But this time is different. This time, I bring you the one with the solutions. This Ninjor action figure is the solution to all our problems. Man, what is it with this franchise and shoving Ninjor into bottles and stuff? Anyway, back to our heroes. The number of times a Power Ranger has actually died in the entirety of the franchise can be counted on one hand, and all the times it did, the Ranger came back one way or another, so this is an interesting storytelling thing, actually exploring what they do with a character death. Zordon and Alpha are unable to save him, and they decide to put his body back in the alley for the police to find, then publicly grieve in the days that follow. Jason takes on the Green Ranger dagger and shield as he did in the show when Tommy just lost his powers, the first time anyway, and he actually has to leave the funeral in the middle of his eulogy because he's so overcome with grief. However, his further sorrow has to wait. Jen is finally awake and begins her exposition. She explains about how she's from the future and that things are broken now. The fracture she encountered in the future was spreading across alternate dimensions. The last thing we saw through it was Superman launching himself through several suns and then punching some blue guy with a hammer. Those I am a man punches keep breaking reality. Her time travel teleport brought her back to the earliest point possible where things began to break, thus she ended up in the alley. Billy asks what she means by how things are broken. This is a timeline of this world and shows all the Ranger teams that follow in your footsteps. But only until Ninja Steel because we haven't figured out the symbols for anyone after that. Also, SPD is in the middle there, even though they take place several years after Ninja Steel. Also, two of those are in established alternate realities and thus don't count. She wouldn't normally risk altering the future like this, but things are bad. There are Rangers after us? Oh yes, not to get too sentimental, but you are all the greats. You're kind of the only ones that anyone outside of the fandom thinks about when it comes to Power Rangers, pop culture, nostalgia, and all. However, the breakage has caused the map of future Ranger teams to change, now making it a flat plane instead of a line. Time Force theorizes that the morphing grid is trying to protect the timeline by fracturing it so that each era is in its own pocket universe to protect itself from paradoxes and causality. Unfortunately, by doing so, it's also risking the integrity of all those other realities. It's all unstable now, and a single crack in that can spread outwards. Like a pane of glass, it might survive for a while with a crack in it, but the bigger the crack gets, it'll all shatter. The energy signature she tracked back was Lord Drakkon's, and they explain who he is. Kimberly thinks she should try to go back in time again and save Tommy, but Jen says it's too late. Now that the timeline is broken, she can't go further back. Wait, wasn't the timeline already broken when you went back, since that was in the future? I mean, technically, the timeline break happened like 8 years ago before your season, though the implication of the opening pages was that you were back in the 31st century, although Wes was with you for some reason, and...
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
We cut to the split-off dimension of the Samurai Rangers, the first team during the Neo-Saban era, and first to be on Nickelodeon. We later learn that this takes place after the end of their season. Their enemies, the Nihilocks, are returning, and the Rangers are back together to train and prepare to stop them again. Unfortunately, Lord Drakkon shows up with a huge armada of his forces. At first, the Rangers are unconcerned because their headquarters, the Shiba House, is protected by mystical symbols. But said symbols only protect them from Nihilock attack. Drakkon's forces, which all seem to be derived from Ranger technology, thus they all look like weirdly militarized versions of the Mighty Morphin team, blast them and use a kind of EMP to knock them out of their morphs. Save for Lauren, who's knocked over this cliff that's suddenly there for some reason. I swear, I've had like 5 different chances to use the space is warped and time is bendable clip. I did it too soon. Drakkon orders his forces to take their morphers to hunt down Lauren. Back over to our heroes, they were already in the process of trying to contact the Coinless, the resistance movement on Drakkon's Earth, to warn them of his return, so they're modifying it to actually travel to the fractured universes. And almost immediately, they detect Drakkon's attack on the Samurai Rangers and teleport over. They detect Lauren and come to her aid, teleporting her away from some of Drakkon's troops. Drakkon himself, though, begins his plans. Finster 5 utilizes Ninjor and the Samurai morphers to infuse their powers into Drakkon, altering his costume even more. Yeah, sure, it looks cool now, but by the end of it, we're just gonna have another version of this thing. The issue ends with him revealing that he's already figured out how to do the process with only one morpher. Any extras they can use to make new soldiers for their army. Following this is the 2018 annual. This is an anthology featuring 5 stories depicting Drakkon getting his hands on other Ranger Team morphers. Zeo, SPD, In Space, RPM, and Ninja Steel. Ninja Steel's is the weakest, mainly because it feels like it was written by people who only had a loose understanding of Ninja Steel's characters. Brody is super serious and concerned with some nightmare he had when he's usually pretty mellow overall. Redbot refers to him as Master, even though he doesn't do that in the show, which is really weird because the writers of it, Becca Barnes and Alwyn Dale, were some of the writers on Ninja Steel. So how did they screw that up? RPM's is the best in my opinion, as Drakkon tries to also recruit team mentor and my favorite character in all of Power Rangers, Dr. K, to his cause. But she ends up blasting him, or rather the android of himself sent in his place. There's a lot of good pathos in it I won't get into, though Drakkon mentions that he's made an alliance with Venjix, the living virus that's the main enemy of the season. SPD actually manages to completely force him and his troops back. Makes sense since they're basically an organized quasi-military group. Yeah, police, but a lot of times they operate more like a military, frankly. With the Zeo Rangers, he actually used a hologram projector to take the place of their Tommy and interacted with them. Clearly disturbed by how much the other Rangers cared about him and each other, to the point where he murdered their Tommy. Dude, if you're gonna kill every Tommy you come across, it's going to take a while. He was kind of prolific in the franchise. Next up is Go-Go Power Rangers number 9. Go-Go was the second Boom Studios Power Rangers comic, running at the same time as Mighty Morphin, but originally taking place before Tommy joined them. It focused more on the personal lives of the Rangers, including a long-running storyline involving their friendship to a kid named Matt, who ended up dating Kimberly for a while and was severely traumatized by an encounter with Rita. He'd later become the Green Ranger after Tommy became the White Ranger in the book, which frankly all sounds like a self-insert fanfic, but was apparently pretty good. Go figure. Anyway, since the book takes place before all this, what actually concerns us is that Ranger Slayer, who it turns out is the alternate universe's Kimberly, brainwashed to serve Drakkon, ended up in the wrong time period while trying to retrieve him. She's brought along the Megazord Drakkon has in his universe, the Grave Zord, and Rita offers to repower it. Also, this is either a weird perspective shot or this Zord is only a one-seater, and it kind of has to be the latter since the establishing shot shows a small warehouse that she's operating out of. What the hell? Anyway, next up is the Free Comic Book Day issue. As I said, most of this is just a recap of the story so far. The plot is that Zordon travels to try to get an audience with the Morphin Masters, the powerful beings Ninjor and Drakkon were talking about. This detail always just tickles me, because the Morphin Masters were just a bit of background lore fluff in one episode of early Power Rangers. The same one that showed Billy building a flying car and the Rangers fighting a chicken monster, and then were never mentioned again afterwards. Until the Boom Studios comic revived them in this, wherein they then got put back into the Power Rangers show for, at the time of this video's release, their final 2 seasons. This franchise is weird, people! Anyway, Zordon wants the Morphin Masters to intervene and stop Drakkon, but their representatives, these 3 beings whose appearances shift between various Ranger teams, say that the Masters don't involve themselves directly in these matters because it's not their place. They also think it's impossible for Drakkon to actually affect the grid itself. And hey, realities come and go, so who cares if these ones vanish, right?
Ah, arrogance and stupidity all in the same package. How efficient of you.
Anyway, back to the main action in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 27. Drakkon's forces have captured their universe's Zack, who was the leader of the Coinless, but he's soon rescued by Skull, aka of Bulkin Skull, who had been acting as a spy inside Drakkon's forces for years. Finally, the true heroes of this franchise will get their due. Let their song echo across the battlefield and fill us with inspiration! The Rangers have brought Lauren back to the command center and they compare notes, but they don't have any time to recover. Drakkon begins a massive invasion of all the fractured universes. Using their communications equipment, Zordon sends out a massive call to each one.
To all those who will hear these words, my name is Zordon of Eltar. I come to you from across the grid with a warning. There is a massive phishing scam going around, Rangers. Do not click the link that claims that Alpha has a game for you to try. His name is Lord Drakkon. His armies are growing. Invest in them now before the stock becomes too expensive. They have found a way to target Rangers with their Black Dragon cannons designed to disrupt your connection to the morphing grid. It's the hottest Christmas item on the market right now, Rangers.
Zordon explains how he's after their morphers and to protect each other if possible, all while we see this big montage of different Ranger teams fighting Drakkon and his soldiers. Good stuff. Fortunately, our heroes soon get a message from Dr. K, who acknowledges that her universe is outside of the fractured part of their reality, but is still under attack regardless. More importantly, though, the RPM Rangers were able to get a hold of one of the Black Dragon cannons, reverse engineer its tech, and counteract it. As such, they think they can adapt that tech to the other teams to protect themselves from being demorphed. Unfortunately, they lose the transmission from her, probably interference from the ongoing battle against Drakkon, but are soon contacted by the Coinless, who say they may have a way to beat Drakkon. As such, the team splits up. Jason and Lauren will try to retrieve Dr. K, Billy, Zack, and Trini will meet with the Coinless, and Jen and Kimberly will try to rescue as many Rangers as they can and bring them back to the command center. Over to Drakkon, he's taken a break from all the conquest to sit on his throne and stare at the Zeonizer crystal he took from Tommy's morpher from the annual. Was the experience enlightening? No. They too hold their Tommy on a pedestal for no reason I can discern. I've got these cool scars! Why am I not as beloved? One of his soldiers informs him of Dr. K's success in blocking his demorpher ray, but Drakkon says that it doesn't matter. She wasn't the only one he made an offer to, and the others he did so were more receptive. Jason and Lauren arrive on the RPM Earth. That's a lot of sand. At least we don't have to worry about Darth Vader. RPM is a post-apocalyptic Earth, in case you didn't know, so most of the Earth has been decimated, and unfortunately, the two are unable to teleport any closer than 10 miles out. Still, they're able to beam the Tyrannosaurus Zord to them, so they at least have a vehicle, and it inexplicably is a 2-seater now, even though one of the frequent stock shots used in the show indicates the cockpit only has room for 1. Whoops. In any case, we get some character development with Lauren explaining her backstory and about how the Nylok are returning. It's more actual character development than she got for the season, where everyone was too busy whining about Jaden, her brother, not being around. The two also bond over the shared craptastic nature of being the Red Ranger and needing to reassure the others not to worry about the things that they themselves are worrying about. Over to the coinless meeting, our heroes beam into what remains of the juice bar. They kept it standing, though, as a reminder. Weird sort of trophy. Drakkon's just pissed that they threw him out when he refused to tip the waitstaff. Coinless Zack says that if they can free Ninjor, they can beat Drakkon. Meanwhile, the Tyrannosaurus Zord reaches the RPM Rangers and Dr. K, helping dispose of the last of Drakkon's troops. Unfortunately, it's then that Drakkon arrives with reinforcements. Korag from Mystic Force, the Psycho Rangers from In Space, and the A-Squad Rangers of SPD, ending out the issue. It's a good thing they're all wearing helmets. I've got to imagine flying on top of that thing would be hell otherwise, especially with the sand.
Ow! The dust! It's like being shot in the eyes by a glitter gun.
Next up is Go-Go Power Rangers number 10. We see the alternate Kim helping Bulk in the Drakkon universe, giving some character development there, but more relevant is Ranger Slayer distracting the main universe Rangers with the Grave Zord, which is apparently fashioned from destroyed Zords from her universe, including the Tiger Zord, the Red Dragon Thunder Zord, and Tor the Shuttle Zord. A reminder that Tor the Shuttle Zord is technically still out there, like the original Dragon Zord, just waiting for a future season to do something with it. Just saying, even if they end up rebooting Power Rangers, there's something they can use for a plot point in the future. While Ranger Slayer herself goes to the command center to try to hijack their communications equipment, disabling Zordon before Kimberly arrives to fight her. Back to the main plot in MMPR number 28, Jen and Kimberly bond a bit in the Pterodactyl Zord. Jen gets a headache, explaining that it's a result of the timeline altering and her memories shifting to come to terms with the paradox. It's a bit of a changed premise. While altering the timeline did happen a few times in Time Force, the Rangers themselves never seem to notice any alterations to themselves. In fact, more just having an existential crisis in one episode that the world of the future they wanted to return to might not be the one they left. Still, it's a logical thing that could have happened in the season, and once again, Kim is hoping this means that maybe time can be changed and Tommy still saved. Unfortunately, Jen hits her with a shot of unfortunate actual continuity. That even if Tommy could be saved, he may not be the same one she lost, citing her ex-fiancé Alex, who died in the first episode of Time Force, before being resurrected later due to time travel shenanigans and a much bigger asshole than he was before. He was different in little ways, and so was I. We were never the same. I mean, we couldn't be. So instead, I hooked up with his ancestor who looked exactly like him, and consequently meaning I banged his great to the 30th power grandfather. Did I mention this franchise is weird yet? They arrive at the space colony Terra Venture from the season Lost Galaxy, and unfortunately, they've already lost there. The only survivor they can find is Corone, the second Lost Galaxy Pink Ranger, who has her own long story we could get into, but probably don't need to right now. The two have been around, managing to collect some Ranger survivors. Most importantly, Carter Grayson, Lightspeed Rescue Red Ranger, and possibly the most badass Ranger to ever wear a helmet. Carter Grayson, who looked at a monster on the road and tried to run it over with a Jeep. Carter Grayson, who was taunted by monsters to fire at point-blank range, even though the explosion could kill him. And did it anyway. Carter Grayson, who looked at two giant monsters trying to stomp on him, no Megazord to jump into, and declared,
I have two guns. One for each of you.
Honestly, we give him a gun, a sword, and a couple of energy drinks, and he'll probably solo Drakkon and take him down in an hour. Alpha contacts them to alert them of the battle in the RPM universe, saying the other Rangers will need all the help they can get. At the battle, Jason is trying to convince the others to get Dr. K to safety and help reinforce the other Ranger teams, but she refuses to leave Corinth to Drakkon. If Jason is correct, then this show of force is because Lord Drakkon fears me. I don't know about you, but I certainly think we should reinforce those fears. And leave it to Dr. K to make me redirect all my badass praise from Carter Grayson over to her. Damn. She modifies Lauren's Samuraizer to protect her from the cannons while the Rangers speculate whether they should try to force her out anyway. But the A-Squad Rangers soon show up to disrupt the conversation. On Drakkon's Earth, our heroes wait for a signal from Skull, who's snuck back into the palace, and Zack gets a heart-to-heart with his alternate universe counterpart for character development. As they get the signal to enter the palace, Drakkon himself enters the fray and easily forces the RPM Rangers back. He manages to get hold of Summers, the Yellow Ranger's morpher, before Kimberly's reinforcements arrive. Unfortunately, without the modifications, they're all quickly demorphed and surrounded. Jason finally convinces Dr. K it's time to leave, and she explains that the protective dome over Corinth is what's blocking their teleportation signal. Over at Drakkon's palace, they quickly find and free Ninjor from the crown on his head controlling him.
Oh, that's so much better! That thing was playing Vanilla Ice's ninja rap in my head on an endless loop. It was okay the first hour or two, but after that...
Unfortunately, Finster 5 quickly locates them. Alternate universe Zack is killed, and Skull holds off the guards while our Zack and Ninjor escape. On the RPM Earth, Jason shatters Corinth's dome, but the T-Rex Zord is disabled in the attempt. What have I done? I only had 2 more payments left on it. The Rangers are teleported to safety as Ninjor explains to Zack and the Trinies that Drakkon isn't destroying Rangers or trying to conquer them, but rather trying to use them to get inside of the Morphin grid itself, ending the issue. Back to Go-Go Power Rangers with issue 11, Alpha manages to put enough voltage in the command center to knock down Ranger Slayer, but the actual effect of it is to free her from Drakkon's mind control. Character stuff follows until Drakkon contacts her to let her know what's up with the rest of the storyline, but upon realizing she's free of his control, decides to leave her behind. Speaking of the rest of the storyline, on to issue number 29. We see that the Rangers Drakkon captured are being held in Rita's old palace on the moon, but more importantly, our heroes have gathered back at the command center with Ninjor to discuss what's up. Each Ranger team's morphers connect to the Morphin grid in a slightly different way. For instance, I once got drunk and made morphers that connected to the Morphin grid via pudding. Personally, I thought it was pretty brilliant. I'm amazing. By adding the equivalent of more access points to his power set, he is increasing his resonance with the grid. However, while this puts a strain on the grid, so too does his growing forces. He's DDoSing the morphing grid! The increased strain on the grid is what's causing the barriers between dimensions and worlds to collapse. It's being done via a tower on his Earth that allows Drakkon to split the powers of the morphers he's captured into his army. Dr. K and Grace Sterling will work on modifying everyone's morphers to keep them safe, while they put out a call across the grid for any remaining Rangers to gather at the command center. They're going to make a massive assault on the tower and tear it down, hopefully saving reality. And the first recruit for the cause soon arrives, Andros, the Red Space Ranger, coming with news. He's found where Drakkon is keeping all the captured Rangers. Back in Drakkon's palace, he tells Skull that he admires his conviction and belief that he's done the right thing, before snapping his neck. Well, that's just sending mixed signals to your employees, dude. What are you gonna do? Tell your guys not to believe that what they're doing by serving you is right, lest they get their necks snapped too? He orders the commander, who was Skull's superior, taken below and relieved of duty for not seeing this coming. And now you're creating a hostile work environment, man! The Better Business Bureau is gonna hear about this, and you're gonna get such low ratings! Finster informs him that they've found Ranger Slayer, leading to the tie-in I talked about a bit ago. After the call ends, Drakkon collapses. His body is tearing itself apart due to the strain of taking on so many powers at once, but he gets back up. He knows that with Ninjor back with the Rangers, their plans have been exposed and they need to finish collecting morphers before our heroes can strike. Back with the Rangers, Andros explains what happened during the in-space portion of the annual issue and how he followed TJ when he was captured. This leads to a nice moment when Jen encourages Corone to go talk to Andros, paradox be damned, since at this point in time, he doesn't know that she gets recovered. The moment is observed by Doggy Kruger, head of SPD, and Zordon.
Well, it's nice to get one happy moment out of all this. Yes, they have been few and far between. We've been so busy today that Alpha hasn't given me my fish flakes today. I'm getting antsy.
I heard who this Drakkon guy is, and what he did to your 6th Ranger. I'm sorry. You've got my sympathy.
I appreciate your sentiment, Commander Kruger. The experience of loss has been trying. That and I've had an itch on my nose for the last week and nobody to scratch it.
We can show them the path, we can try to set an example, but ultimately, it's up to them. And whether it's losing a team to the bad guys, or to the great unknown, we've got to somehow be okay with that. As much as we care about them, and try to protect them, we really don't have any control over them. This is really why this story is so good. Not because of Tommy worship or fan servicey cameos, but rather getting to see the characters legit interacting, comparing and contrasting, getting to have moments of shared humanity about their lives. Admittedly, this moment of humanity is between a dog and a giant alien head in a tube, but still. After some more character bits between Jason and Grace Sterling, they get down to brass tacks. They'll need a ship to mount the rescue mission to carry that many Rangers, and Grace has one to offer. Terra Venture. It seems she's the one responsible for its construction. Also, this seems like overkill since that is a massive space colony that had, like, an entire city inside of it. Anyone have an Astro Megaship on hand? I mean, I've got a few to spare. Especially one that won't shut the hell up! Other Rangers begin arriving in a gorgeous set of pages, first with these points of light beaming down, and then a splash page featuring a ton of Rangers. Good stuff. However, they also have another thing to consider. Even if they take down the tower, Drakkon himself is still a threat. And unfortunately, Zordon knows only one solution to that. And thus we end the issue with a hologram of him and Doggy Kruger going to visit Rita. Over to Go-Go Power Rangers number 12, we learned that all the scenes of Kimberly on the other Earth were showing the lead up to her getting brainwashed by Drakkon. All the things that happened that made her realize she needed to kill him. Now that she's free of the brainwashing, she hunts down Tommy in that time period and shoots him with an arrow. Not to kill him, but it seems to plant something inside him, to his eternal confusion. She then teleports away and ends up with Grace Sterling at Promethea, though in the issue it's not clear if it's still in the past or if she time jumped. Either way, just one more secret to pile on to all the others she keeps. You know, Grace, maybe the Rangers would be more inclined to trust you if you didn't keep lying and hiding important things. Just a thought. Time for our penultimate issue, Mighty Morphin number 30. After some banter, Zordon and Kruger explain that Drakkon's power is based on the same magic Rita utilized with the green power coin. Thus, if she can use her magic to sever his connection to his powers, he's out of the game. Although he could just find another Ninjor to fix his powers again. Maybe this one will speak like Bullwinkle instead of Dudley Do-Right. They convince her to help while Drakkon prepares fresh modifications to Saba. He's actually happy now that the Rangers are coming to the tower, since it means he can steal the remaining morphers he needs. We get a montage of various Rangers meeting with each other as they prepare, Jason making a pretty good speech about the coming battle. Because no matter how many soldiers Drakkon creates, no matter how many powers he steals, he will never have what we do. He will never be a part of what we are. Now then, if you could all sign your union contracts, we could get this meeting started. In another nice moment, Jason gives Kimberly the Dragon Dagger and shield to command the Megazord while he leads the fight from the ground. The Rangers teleport in and the battle starts. Rita, Kruger, Zordon, and Ninjor teleport into his palace for her to begin the ritual to drain his powers, utilizing the green candle that in the actual show would be the first time Tommy lost his powers. As the battle wages on, it also includes representatives of Hyperforce, the Power Rangers tabletop RPG show that was going on at the time. Drakkon himself enters the fray. Saba now equipped with the ability to steal their powers directly, despite the modifications Dr. K made. What's worse, though, is that their Megazords prove useless as Drakkon has also gotten his hands on Serpentera, Lord Zed's ginormous Zord. And I'm guessing he solved the thing's AAA battery issue and replaced them with, like, 2 9-volts. Kim manages to take her best shot at Drakkon by launching the Dragon Dagger at his chest like an arrow. It seems to do nothing, but then the green candle spell takes hold. He teleports back to his palace for Rita and company to gloat, but then Finster comes out and zaps them all with Lord Zed's staff. Yeah, especially with Serpentera. It seems to be implied that he took on and defeated Lord Zed, too. It's too late to stop his powers from being taken, so he decides to infuse himself with the remaining morphers and finish the job. Finster begs him not to, even insists that he won't let him kill himself, admitting how much he cares for him. And Drakkon snaps his neck so he can proceed. As he were competing with David Zaslav for the world's worst CEO mug, Drakkon. He infuses himself with the final morphers, and everything in the area goes bright white, thus bringing us to our finale, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Shattered Grid number 1. Oh, finally! We're at the beginning of Shattered Grid! We start off in the battle on the moon, Jen using her future tech to quickly assemble all the remaining Zords into a new Megazord to fight off Serpentera. Jason then takes Megaforce's Q-Rex Zord and blasts the tower, but they're too late. Drakkon appears again briefly in his final form, and everything goes white, expanding outwards even past the moon. The team on Terra Venture finishes rescuing the Rangers from the prison, but then when the light appears, Grace Sterling orders the place to teleport away, leading into a spin-off book. And then suddenly we're with Drakkon as Tommy in a house, with Zordon and Rita as his parents as he happily eats breakfast. Even their dog is named Kruger. What is it, Kruger? What's wrong? Alpha 5 fell down a well? Is that it? Drakkon spots trouble in the distance and morphs using a crystal embedded in his chest. The world has changed. Jen works for him and pilots the Tiger Zord as Drakkon dispatches some weird giant animal spirit. Trini and Zack are reporters who want to interview him. He promises to never let these energy spirits destroy his world, but then he starts seeing an image of our Tommy talking to him, saying this world is a lie and it shouldn't exist. He goes back to his mansion where Billy is fixing up his car, Finster is his butler, and Lauren and Jason are teaching a martial arts class for students training to be soldiers for Drakkon. Another attack by the energy beings come, and Drakkon heads out to fight them, trying to ignore the Tommy hallucination. We both know the truth, Tommy. What you really are, incredibly marketable. Drakkon insists he's a god, but Tommy says that he's a god who gets winded and can't handle hallucinations. I am different! Yes, you are. But we both know what that really means. What you saw in the green chaos crystal all those years ago. Oh yes, we know what he saw.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down.
Apparently, Drakkon saw a vast multiverse full of an infinite number of worlds. But in every other universe out there, Tommy was a good guy. Drakkon was the only villain. It's why he's driven to kill every other version of himself he encounters. Why even in this world that he created, he kept the Power Rangers alive to be toadies. And it's really about his own self-loathing. After all, if he's the only Tommy who ever went bad, then he is the flawed, crappy one, not any other. Lord Drakkon! Turns out I'm the asshole! Drakkon flies off as Tommy becomes corporeal and visits all the Rangers, reawakening their memories of who they really are. Our heroes reunite. While Drakkon grows suspicious when Finster mentions that Billy had left with him earlier, Tommy explains how he's alive. It seems that when Ranger Slayer shot an arrow into him in the past, that arrow contained a piece of the green chaos crystal. It's the same crystal that Drakkon empowered when he killed Tommy, but not exactly. It sent his essence outside of time and space, where he could do nothing but watch everything unfold. He was able to re-enter reality thanks to the 3 representatives of the Morphin Master from the Free Comic Book Day issue, known as the Emissaries. Hello, Power Rangers. Zordon of Eltar has spoken highly of you. We are pleased to meet you. We regret it is not under better circumstances. At the very least, you were on our Christmas card list. They admit they genuinely didn't think it was possible for someone to become powerful enough to enter the grid like this and kick their asses. Drakkon had then taken the heart of a master and incorporated it into himself, thus the diamond in his chest. With the other master's whereabouts unknown, we could only watch as Drakkon stood before the multiverse itself, as he took dimensions, worlds, universes, and simply made them cease to exist. The most terrible tax write-off in all existence. In its place, he created this world, and the emissaries went and grabbed Tommy and slowly infiltrated the place. Tommy says that Drakkon may have godlike power, but his mind is still human, full of self-doubt and self-hatred, which are manifesting in the form of those energy beings. They need to take the Master Heart and put it back in the grid if they want any hope of undoing all this. Unfortunately, Drakkon is caught wise to them and attacks. You failed when I was but a man! I was but a man! God damn it, another one? While Drakkon manages to sweep away the Rangers, Tommy summons Jen and Lauren in the Dragon and White Tiger Zords to blast him from above. Tommy grabs the heart and the two appear in a void. While Tommy's in contact with it, they're both sharing the power of the heart and they start struggling. Drakkon beats down on Tommy for a moment, but Tommy soon gains the upper hand, declaring that he's stronger than Drakkon because he stayed with his friends. They're what you can feel the absence of, right here. And the only reason that hole exists, the only reason you're weaker than me, is because you were too scared to let them in. You could have beaten me if you had just hosted one bad movie night! Tommy retrieves the heart and they return to Drakkon's world, but without him to maintain it, it starts collapsing. The emissaries lead the Rangers through a portal out, but Tommy, being the good guy, offers Drakkon the chance to come with them, that it's not too late to become a better person than he was, but he turns his back on Tommy. They're inside the grid now, the emissaries explaining that the Rangers now control the heart. They can create a whole new existence, or they can return things back to the way they were. However, doing so would erase their memories of what happened during all this and reset things to the way they were, including restoring Drakkon and his world. That being said, some changes will happen. The multiverse has been shattered, and like a broken pane of glass, it'll never completely fit back together again. Ah, great, they're gonna end up in the Hamilton Comics Power Rangers series instead. Jason says that it doesn't matter if they don't remember any of it. They're Power Rangers because they had what it took to make the hard decisions and do things for the good of everyone. It still mattered because they did the right thing. They say their farewells to Jen and Lauren. And so our comic ends with them putting their hands on the Master Heart and everything fades to white. Would have been really funny if this had been where the series ended and we could pretend that the TV show was actually the retcon version of their world that they ended up creating. Anyway, this comic is great. While the Go-Go Power Rangers issues felt very much looser in their connection to Shattered Grid, mostly just there to give us our Deus Ex Machina for retrieving Tommy, the story never feels bogged down or wasting our time. The strength of the Boom Studios Power Rangers books really lies with its character work, and that's carried over here, but on a larger scale. My biggest problem with some of the weaker team-up episodes of the show really just boils down to a lack of character interaction. A lot of time, they're plot-focused above all else. Sure, the teams are joining together, but it's a lot of suit actors punching monsters side by side rather than letting very different personalities mingle and share their experiences. While we don't get a huge amount of that here, we get more than enough to really make it worth the ride, and especially nice to see Lauren getting some focus after her lack of it in Power Rangers Samurai. That being said, it would have been nice to have more individual representation like we did with Lauren and Jen, bring in counterparts to the other team members to have scenes with. Zach, for instance, got a character development scene, but with himself, the alternate universe version. Would have been cool to have him hang out with, say, Dylan from RPM, the serious, brooding, Mad Max-esque Black Ranger, to contrast with Zach's more fun-loving personality. Have Billy nerd out with Noah, the royal smart Blue Ranger from Megaforce. Trini gets the least amount of development in the story, when we could have had her hang out with, well, too many Yellow Rangers to count, but maybe Chip from Mystic Force, someone chivalry-minded, or Kira from Dino Thunder to bond over their respective high school teenage experiences. What we get is great, but it could have been even better is what I'm saying. It's also a story that understands the balance between fan service and legitimate storytelling. Stuff like the Psycho Rangers and Serpentera coming in are fun, but not the focus of the story, which ultimately is about Drakkon's failure to understand that message of Power Rangers. Camaraderie, friendship, diversity, hell, just different people coming together to love each other will ultimately be stronger than his dreams of conquest. Bear in mind, even when he won by creating his world, he was still populating it with people that should have meant nothing to him because he craved that companionship, and he betrayed the one person who actually freely offered it by killing Finster. Shattered Grid is just a great story for the 25th anniversary of the franchise, and still holds up pretty well years later. It may need a lot of backstory to really understand it fully, but it's worth it. That being said, the ending feels a bit rushed as we don't see the Rangers returning to normal afterwards, seeming to leave things on a quasi-cliffhanger and not really showing where things stand now in their universe. Next time, we begin the holiday season with one last Patreon-sponsored review, but one appropriate for the month. It's Santa vs. Dracula. You guys hear something? This is the Morphin grid, isn't it? A form of it, yes. Its most budget-conscious version. Hello, my friends. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon, buy merch from the store, NV link in the description, or check out the t-shirts available from Teespring. Thanks for watching.